My name is Derek Mayfield. I'm 32, and I run operations for a restaurant group that seats 3,000 people a week across 4 locations. I know how a check moves from kitchen to table the way most people know how to tie their shoes. I'm not rich. I clear about $10,000 a month, and I put 1,000 of that into retirement every single time, no matter what, before it ever touches my checking account. I rent a 2-bedroom apartment and keep it simple, and I have exactly one indulgence. Sparkling water, still or sparkling, that's what I order when I eat out every single time. My staff thinks it's a quirk. It's not. When you grow up paying for everyone else's steak, you learn to keep your own tabs small enough to walk away from. I manage 4 restaurants, not own, manage. I built my way up from bussing tables at a steakhouse in Knoxville when I was 17, still smelling like fryer oil on the school bus the next morning. Hostess at 19, server at 21, floor manager by 24, regional operations director by 30. 3 years ago, my sister Brooke decided to open a cafe. Not a business plan, not a market study. A cafe because she'd seen one in Charleston with exposed brick and a matcha menu and then thought, I could do that. She was 26, had never managed so much as a lemonade stand, and needed a $75,000 small business loan. The bank said yes, she did with a cosigner. That cosigner was supposed to be me. Mom called on a Sunday. Dad sat beside her, arms folded, already angry before I'd answered. Brooke needed the loan. The cafe was her dream. I had good credit, a stable job, a history of saying yes. Just sign the papers, Derek. I asked to see the business plan first. Brooke didn't have one. I asked about margins, lease terms, supplier contracts. She stared at me like I'd insulted her cooking. Mom's voice went flat. She's your sister. You don't need a spreadsheet to love your sister. I said no. Not because I did not love Brooke. I did. But I'd spent enough years in this industry watching people pour savings into concepts with no foundation. Dad stood up. He pointed at the door and said the thing that closed it for 3 years. If you won't help this family, you're not part of it. I drove home. The next morning, I'd been removed from the family group chat. Here's the part that's hard to admit. The silence almost broke me. Not because they were right. I knew they weren't, but because I missed being needed. It took me 2 years and a therapist named Dr. Quinn to name that properly. I'd been the family fixer since I was 17. First paycheck went to groceries. Tax refund went to Mom's dental work. When Dad's transmission blew, I paid for the rebuild and told him it was covered under warranty because I knew he'd never accept a handout from his 22-year-old son. When Brooke got married, I covered the florist, the photographer, half the reception, and smiled while Mom gave the toast about raising 2 strong kids. 2 strong kids, 1 bill. I trained them. I taught my parents that my wallet was a vending machine. Insert guilt, receive check. When the machine finally set out of order, they didn't troubleshoot it. They unplugged it and walked away. So when Mom's text popped up after 3 years of silence, an invitation to dinner at a place called the Belvedere to start healing as a family, just the 4 of us, she wrote. Her, Dad, me, and Brooke. I felt the old reflex fire in my chest like a muscle I hadn't stretched on in years. Go fix it. Make it quiet again. Family takes care of family, sweetheart, she added. She'd said that when I was 19 and she needed my server tips for the electric bill. She'd said it when Dad needed a cosigner on the truck. It had always meant one thing in my house. Derek takes care of family. I noticed she hadn't said sorry. Passive voice, no subject, no one responsible. I typed back, I'll be there. Then I set my phone down and pretended my hands weren't shaking. My coworker Jess told me not to go. This has ambush written all over it, she said. My sous chef Marco said the same thing, shorter. Don't, but I'd already decided, not because I believed them, but because I wanted to know whether 3 years had changed anything, or whether the silence had just been a longer version of the same conversation we'd always had, the one where I was expected to listen, agree, and pay. I set one rule, 1 dinner, civil, no money, and if it felt wrong, I'd leave before dessert. I dressed simple on purpose, dark slacks, a gray button-down I wear to vendor meetings, no watch except the plain steel one I bought myself the year I made regional director. The drive took 40 minutes. Somewhere around the highway merge, my stomach started to tighten the way it does when a walk-in cooler fails on a Friday night, and I know the next 6 hours are going to hurt. The Belvedere sat at the end of a strip of shops on the expensive side of town. Dad's truck was in the third row, Mom's sedan next to it, then Aunt Linda's white Buick, Uncle Greg's SUV, Brooke's hatchback. 3 more cars I recognize. 2 I didn't. My stomach dropped. Just the 4 of us, Mom had written. I counted 9 vehicles. I sat in my car for 2 full minutes, engine off. Then I got out, straightened my shirt, and walked toward the entrance because I was 32 years old and I was not going to start running again in a restaurant parking lot on a Thursday evening. Inside, the hostess checked her screen. Mayfield, your party's already seated, she said, in the tone hostesses use when they've been managing a large group for an hour. She led me toward the back. I could hear them before I saw them. Laughter, clinking glasses, Aunt Linda's cackle cutting through the room. I turned the corner and saw the table. 16 chairs, every one filled except the one at the far end, directly across from my father. White linen, heavy silverware, candles in low crystal holders. Lobster tails fanned across crushed ice. Wagyu sliders on a tiered stand. A charcuterie board the size of a coffee table. In the center, a bottle of wine I recognized from vendor tastings. A 2016 Santa Rita. Retail around $400, already half empty. The hostess paused and said quietly, "Your father put a card down to hold the reservation. Just so you know, we require one for parties over 12. I filed that detail the way I file every operational fact. Silently, his card was on file, and yet somehow I already knew the bill wasn't supposed to land on him. Mom saw me first. She stood with both arms open and the whole table turned. "Derek, sweetheart, look at you." Applause. Actual applause, like I was a returning soldier and not the son they'd ghosted for 1,000 days. I sat down. What else do you do when 16 people are watching and the chair is already pulled out? "I thought it was just the 4 of us," I said. Mom waved her hand. "Well, once Linda heard, and then Greg, and then your cousin Tara, it just grew. You know how family is." I knew exactly how family was. Dad sat at the head carving a wagyu slider like it was Thanksgiving. Brooke sat beside him, phone in one hand, wine in the other. Aunt Linda and Uncle Greg anchored the middle. Cousins Tyler, Megan, and Jake filled the rest, along with 2 people I'd never met. Dad waved the waiter over, a young guy whose name tag read Nathan, and rattled off another round without glancing at a menu. Another lobster round, 2 more wagyu plates, and bring the good grand crew. He pulled his card from his wallet and held it up like a magician showing a coin before a trick. "Put it all on this," he said. "We're celebrating tonight." Something was off. I'd grown up watching Dad argue over the price of a muffler. This was a performance, aimed at me. "Look how well we're doing. Look how little we needed you." Except his truck still had the dent he'd never fixed, and Mom's purse strap was held together with a safety pin. The small cuts started around the second bottle. Aunt Linda said it must be nice running all those fancy restaurants while the rest of them clipped coupons. Brooke, without looking up from her phone, added, "He wouldn't know. He hasn't been around." Each comment landed with the precision of something rehearsed. I excused myself around the 40-minute mark. In the restroom, I found a phone on the counter, case covered in stickers. Brooke's. The screen was lit with a group chat called Dinner Plan, 3 members, Mom, Dad, Brooke. I picked it up the way I'd pick up a vendor invoice that didn't add up. "Don't tell Derek it's everyone," Mom had written 4 days earlier. "Once he's there with the whole family watching, he won't dare say no. He never could handle a scene." Dad had replied, "Just make sure he sits at my end. I'll handle the ask." Brooke's line came 2 minutes later. "Order the good stuff before he gets here. Once it's on the table, he can't exactly send it back, LOL. I scrolled further back. "Mom, 10 days ago, the bank called again Thursday. We need to figure out something before June." Dad, "Derek can cover us for spring. He's got more than enough." And Mom again, 8 days ago. "It's not asking for money, it's letting him back into the family. He should be grateful we're even giving him this chance." Grateful. They wanted me grateful for being tricked into a 16-person dinner so I could pay a bill I didn't order. For a family that had cut me off the last time I said no. I set the phone back down exactly where I found it, washed my hands, and looked at myself in the mirror. For the first time in 15 years, I was not going to pay it. I walked back to the table and slid into my seat. Everyone glanced up, mid-conversation, mid-bite. I nodded around the table. Aunt Linda, Uncle Greg, good to see you. Tyler, Megan, Jake, glad you could make it. Brooke didn't look up from her phone, so I just tipped my glass toward her. Mom reached for my hand and I let her hold it for a second. Dad gave me the nod he always gives, the one that means he thinks the matter is settled. I didn't sit back down all the way. I stayed on the edge of the chair, purse and keys still in hand. I'm not staying, I said. It was good seeing everyone. Mom's smile faltered. Derek, we haven't even had dessert. I know, I said. I've got an early morning. I just wanted to say hello. Dad's jaw tightened, the same tell I'd cataloged my whole life. Derek, sit down. I'm not sitting down, Dad. I said hello. That's what I came to do. Nobody moved for a second. Brooke finally looked up from her phone, confused, like the script she'd rehearsed didn't have this line in it. Aunt Linda opened her mouth to say something about family, and I didn't wait to hear it. I stood, pushed my chair in, and walked back toward the front of the restaurant. I didn't stop at the service station. I didn't say 2 sentences to anyone in black. I just walked past the hostess stand, out through the heavy glass doors into the warm evening air, and got in my car. I sat there for a moment with the engine off, the sticky notes still pressed to the steering wheel. One dinner, then home. I hadn't stayed for the check, hadn't stayed for the ask I knew was coming, hadn't given them the scene they'd built the whole evening around. I just said hello and left them sitting there with a table full of food and no one left to hand the bill to. I started the engine and drove home in silence. This time, the silence was mine.